All right, y'all, welcome back to Really Good Soup, and we're back with another chapter. We have a break next week, unfortunately, but we still have a good amount to talk about in this chapter, so I'm excited. But really quick, if you guys have been enjoying these reviews, recaps, please let me know and throw me a like or a subscribe or a share, possibly, because like, as much as I do enjoy like doing the reactions and stuff, and enjoy is a very strong word considering how low effort it is. This is like the stuff that I'm actually kind of putting effort into, and like it's big because I can just talk about One Piece all day. So yeah, if you guys are enjoying them, please let me know. Got some fun art on the cover. Chapter 1168, The Snows of Elbaph. Got Hachan, I guess a family of sheep knitting Hachan 6 gloves. That's cute, and look how happy he is. The village itself also kind of looks like, like Elbaph kind of architecture, at least with like the roofing over here. But anyway, so we start the chapter about 15 years ago. This is like a year before Harald's death, and we just like cut around the world, including a little quick stop at Umit's shipping yard, which is currently being ransacked by the Blackbeard pirates. But like we see so many people like starting to feel comfortable with Elbaph, starting to integrate their like culture, like they're importing their goods, like seafood and wood. All of Harald's efforts, they are starting to bear fruit now, which is like, it is definitely cool to see. Like this is what Harald has been pining after. Like as much as I really disagree with the execution of his methods, it is at least like it has been in the pursuit of like a better future for Elbaph, as well as like, his own children, his own like family. But then we cut a little bit to the Walrus School, where we see a conversation between Saul and Harald. And like Harald's like pretty stoked that, like all the kids now, they generally don't have like that instinctive warrior, like I need to beat the shit out of everything around me. Now they're actually playing with each other. They're like lightly sparring, but like they're not like actively trying to kill each other, which like as much as Saul likes that, he's just, like also asking like, hey, aren't you a bit worried that we're, losing, part of our own heritage? To which Harald, like, he delivers a line which, like, I both agree with and disagree with, where, like, he says that I no longer think of our military might as our national strength, which, like, on one hand, I totally get that, like, from Harald's point of view, like, the might of Elbaph's giants, like, they've kind of already, that they've been a given, but, like, the actual, like, strength of Elbaph, like, or, like, the actual core of Elbaph can't continue to be defined only through military might. But that is also like a little rich coming from somebody who's like he himself is physically one of the strongest people on the planet, and you command an army of people that are just miles, like thousands of times stronger than just like your average Marine. So like it's easy kind of for you to say like, oh yeah, I don't think of our military might as our national strength. You can't be telling that to like Dressrosa, But in the next couple panels, we see Harald and Ida right before Ida's death, like how she's, rejoicing now that Elbaph's been changed, and all of, Harald's efforts are like finally, coming to light, or like coming into fruition. Yeah. And Harald himself, like, he's like trying his best to like put any sort of like savagery or like that kind of history behind him. But even Ida brings up like, hey, I like the whole warrior's pride aspect of it. But Harald's like, we don't even need that warrior's pride aspect anymore, because we're going to be all peaceful, lovey, like hugging it out kind of a civilization now. And another thing that Harald also kind of harps on is like the fact that he and Ida aren't allowed to marry, which like, I feel like at some point during Elbaph, we have to address these fucking elders. And, I really want to learn more about these elders, because, like, throughout this flashback, we've seen Harald go up against, the world government, and he has his, like, turmoils with them. He had some turmoils with Rocks, which, like, all to say, like, he was still trying to pursue his dream of, like, making a culture-rich Elbaph or whatever, and he still had to go through all these obstacles. But the one obstacle that, like, it seems like was just straight up never in his power to begin with, like, no matter how delusional he might have seemed, is, like, his standing with the quote-unquote elders of Elbaph, the ones that had forbidden the marriage, like, in the first place, and then the ones that also wanted him to marry off to Estrid. And then also they're the ones that like personally assigned Estrid's brother to Loki. I don't know what they were trying to accomplish with that, but I definitely want to get some answers about who these elders are and why like their word is like so revered over like King Harald, who's been trying to change the culture in like a drastically other way. So, like, I guess this is the one part of the culture that can't change. I don't know. I have a feeling we're going to explore that a little bit more once we start exploring like Loki's and Lola's past, because I'm starting to get the feeling that those elders had some sort of like hand in Lola rejecting Loki. Like, obviously, she might have not had feelings for Loki either way, but I feel like there's going to be a point where those elders had some sort of hand in making Loki even feel shittier after the rejection. So, I mean, that I guess we'll have to wait and see to find out, because we're still in the Harald flashback. And, Ida and Harald, they share their final moments together, and Harald's like, don't worry, once Elbaph finally a fully recognized nation, we'll be able to go out and travel and meet all these new peoples and like bring all these cultures together just like we were doing before. And she's like, hell yeah, that sounds fantastic. And then dies. Which, like, now I'm starting to get a little bit more my ire for Harald grows a little bit more, because we cut to, you see Harald's reaction. He's crying, obviously. A couple of the other giants crying. We see Hyrudin run in, crying, obviously. And then we cut to Loki's still imprisoned in his cell for burning down the village, which he did in the name of his mother, which, like, at some point, like, is there any sort of, like, explanation that goes to Harald, like, hey, your son, even though what he did was shitty, like, we have an idea of, like, why he was doing it, what he was doing. But you know what? Now that I'm saying that out loud, Loki is, he's the accursed child. He's the liar. He's the trickster, whatever. So anything that he said probably would not have held much value. But at least to, like, Harald, you could have, like, explained to the, like, hey, I didn't just, like, burn this village down for no reason, right? By the way, they poisoned our mom. I don't know, Harald. Like, everything that he's done, it's been definitely for the betterment of Elbaph, but everything he's done has also just been, like, at the cost of being a father for Loki. Like, just rarely ever in his life. The one time he decides to come back is after Rox already just, like, beat the shit out of him. From there on out, like, just more or less ignored him, like, while he was off doing his Elbaph things or whatever. And then sold out his freaking idol. And then didn't let him see his mom after she died. So, I don't know, Harald. Like, I feel for your, like, Elbaph struggle, but I do not feel for you at all when it comes to your, like, familial dynamics. So then we cut to 1 year ahead. Now we're back in the Holy Land, and we find out Shanks is gone. So it looks like Shanks was supposed to have taken the deep sea contract or whatever, the second level contract. And right before he was about to take it, he, fucked off. Which, like, it kind of, one, lines up with his character, obviously. Like, obviously, he's not about to do some fucked up shit for Emu. But at the same time, he's been God's steel for a little bit, I think, right? So I would imagine he'd had to have proved his loyalty somewhat. And so it makes me wonder, what God's Knight's missions did they send Shanks on where he had to, play the part, So yeah, with Shanks gone, the world government, they see Harald as, like, the next best candidate. They're just like, hey, yeah, do you want to become the Deep Sea Covenant? And Harald, without even asking any questions, he's like, yep, please sign me up, you son of a bitch, I'm in. And he walks up with the Gorosei, about to actually meet Emu. And as he's walking up, they're just, like, telling him, was like, damn, you're going to be such a great king now, especially that you're going to get the Deep Sea Covenant. And Harald's like, about that, actually, I'm probably not going to be king myself. I might just, like, give that to, like, my son or somebody more fit to be king now that I'm getting old. And Emu is just, like, listening to this whole thing, like, nah, dog. You're about to be my bitch for life. And that's literally how that whole chain of events ends up taking place. Harald, he accepts the God's Knight's offering. He gets his little tattoo. He gets his immortality and whatnot. And now he's like, damn, Emu, this feels great. I'm gonna do whatever you want me to do from now on. And Emu's like, bet, I'm gonna hold you to that. And you know what? Good for Harald for being able to celebrate, I guess, like for a tiny bit. It's very short lived, I'm sure. And then what I'm assuming is probably like the next day, after he draws his little pentagram into like floor of OS Castle, Emu's finally like, okay, now I can finally drop the facade. Give me an army right now on the double. And Harald just like finally putting it together, being like, wait, what? The government was tricking me the whole time?
Say, hold up, wait a minute, something ain't right.
What do you mean? Was my best friend Rox, who's been trying to tell me this shit for like 30 years, actually, making some sense? And like, I feel like most of the fandom probably already agrees with that sentiment, but it just sucks, man. Like, as Rox is seeing all of this go down from hell, and he's just like, dog, I told you.
Well, you just knew that was going to happen. That was going to happen. That's disgusting.
Like, literally down to the last word, I told you. They only see you guys as a military asset, and they're going to try to enslave you. And it's also kind of interesting, like, during this whole process, we get a little bit more like detail between like the distinctions between like the shallow covenant, the deep covenant, and the abyssal covenant. So we have like the shallow covenant is generally just like from what I've gathered, at least, you don't have the immortality yet. Maybe you get a little bit of extra strength, but you're like more or less just you. The next step seems to be the Depths Covenant, which, gives you, like, basically God's Knight's powers, the immortality and the strength. But, like, even though you have your own will, like, most of the time, at any point, Emu can just straight up possess you. It kind of tracks with what we've been seeing with, at least, Gunko in the present right now. And then we have the Abyssal Covenant, which I'm assuming is reserved for the Gorosei. Because that seems to be just like the straight up, full on immortality, straight up devil fruit power, probably just like the halting the aging process. It is kind of interesting to think that, like, when we saw Gunko on God Valley during the native competition, she was introduced as God Steel. So at that time, she was just a prospect, which means at that time, she might have been like the only non-immortal, powered up world noble that we've seen up until that point. Because like everybody else in the God's Knights, they have the regen factor. They got the enhanced strength from Emu. But Gunko, at that time, she was just doing it off of her own strength and off of her own devil fruit. Granted, again, she was going against a bunch of just helpless civilians, but still, like, I imagine at some point she might have like crossed paths with one of the Rocks pirates or the Roger pirates. So maybe she scrapped up with them a little bit. I just thought that was interesting that like Gunko like technically has been like a fighter from her own strength, at least from what we had seen back in God Valley. So anyway, we see Harald like he's like preparing for his final moments now. He knows what's probably about to happen. He knows that Emu's about to straight up enslave him, so he begs his like guards to like, chain me up to this pillar and also send for my sons and Jarul. And like, Hyruden, he's out at sea doing who knows what, and Loki is still being imprisoned for standing up for his mom. So fuck you for that, Harald. But it's kind of crazy to like see like Harald's straight up reaction, just like, I don't give a shit. Please just release Loki right now. So he has to understand like Loki's like straight up like raw innate power, which I'm starting to think is now just manifestation of just like insanely strong Conqueror's Haki. Because we've seen Harald be able to dole out Conqueror's Haki probably equal to like Rox's level. Right before the flashback started, we had a little like exchange between Loki and Skapar Gaban, where Skapar Gaban, he was just telling Luffy, be like, hey, be mindful of how you use Conqueror's Haki against the God's Knights. And that clicked something in Loki's head, say like, oh shit, wait, I actually can beat these guys before. I have beaten these guys before. And at that time, I read that as just being like, okay, Loki, did you really beat the God's Knights? Because I thought he was referring to his encounter with Gunko and Shamrock. But now, like, we know that Harald has the power of the God's Knights, and we know that, well, we at least assume that Loki himself is the one to take down Harald. So he is himself is the one going to be able to dish out some form of like conqueror's hockey, maybe akin to what Roger and Garp were talking about with like, concentrating their mass or whatever with the conqueror's hockey. And maybe that's how we'll see him, defeat Harald. I'm assuming that like that is what Loki's innate ability is. Not ability, but like innate like strength. Like he just maybe was born with like a ungodly amount of conqueror's hockey. It'll be interesting to see for sure. But now we finally have made a full circle. Now we're back to the original point where we had started this flashback. And I'm definitely curious to see how this all plays out because we have so much more context now, like versus like earlier. Because like it's also interesting because like right before the flashback really started with Harald, we also had that conversation with Shanks and Gabon saying like, hey, I couldn't speak to Harald freely in the Holy Land, but I have to tell him something before it's too late. And now we kind of know that, well, one, why he couldn't speak freely, because he was too busy giving an Oscar-worthy performance. But two, like, he's trying to tell something to Harald before it's too late. Very likely telling him, like, yo, don't accept the fucking deep sea covenant or whatever. I don't know. It'll be fun to see how this stuff wraps up next week, because, like, 2025 is almost over, and, like, we're still in this flashback. So I have a feeling that we might still be in the flashback going into 2026. Either that or it's going to end right at the year cutoff. So yeah, I'm excited. I think overall, 12 out of 10 chapter. Like it definitely like a lot of like threads finally being like pulled together. And as much as I still disagree a lot with Harald's methods and his naivete. But I feel for him. I at least like what he was trying to do for Elbaph. But at the same time, horrendous father. Absolutely dog shit father. So yeah, that's all I have to say about that. But really quick, let's take a look at some tweets that I really liked. So this one kind of just echoed what we've all been kind of thinking. But, rejected and disowned by his own mom, Estrid. Lost his idol, Rox. Lost his actual, like, his effective mom, Ida. Forced to kill Harald, despised by Hyrden, which who gives a shit? Scorned by all of Elbaph as the accursed prince. That's really fucked. And yet he's going to be the one to save it. So I do think that I don't think he's going to join the crew. My personal opinion, he just doesn't seem like somebody that's going to start taking orders from somebody, especially like a human. But I could definitely see him being an ally to Luffy or maybe joining the fleet. And then, of course, we got a gift from our boy, Togashi. We got basically what we all imagine is going through Emu's head during this whole thing. Like, it still pisses me off that Harald literally said the line, like, hey, I'll do whatever I need to do, even if it means becoming a slave. Because Emu straight up brought that line back against him this chapter. Like, bro, you told me you would do whatever you needed to do to atone for your history, including becoming a slave. And it's also kind of interesting that like it also just plays into the naivete more that like Harald really thought like he alone was about to shoulder this whole thing, when Emu was just like, history's not so light that it could be shouldered by one person alone. Which, like, imagine if Harald kind of had any concept of that going into his desperate, like, bowing down to the world government. I have a feeling he might have, like, not trying to taken this route of, like, becoming a God's Knight or whatever. But, yeah. Poor Loki, man. That's all I could really think of. Just poor Loki. And Harald, Rox told you. Rox told you literally all of this would happen. Granted, Rox didn't tell you about Emu, but Rox told you about pretty much all of this other stuff. But yeah, that's my 2 cents on the chapter, and let me know what y'all think. But until next time.